NATO Secretary General does not think Putin's war objectives changed. 1 minute read. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg welcomed the steady progress of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, but noted that Russia's goals in the war against Ukraine have not changed. Source: Stoltenberg, after a meeting with Latvian Prime Minister Iveco Salina. Quote, "The Secretary-General hailed the steady progress made by Ukraine's counteroffensive, in which Ukraine's forces have pressed past Russia's first line of defense and are now inflicting heavy damage on Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Below are your comments." P's objectives will never change because he knows that if he gives in he'll be toast at the hands of his hawkish power base. The trouble for P is that he'll be toast anyway because he and his war are a colossal liability for Ru, and the power-hungry vultures will have him for tea. Russian is an evil empire that wants Ukraine land, resource and people. Russian will not admit to that, but that is their objective. They want to be the most powerful. Why? All about greed. It seems Ezekiel wrote in chapter 38 about a war that fits Putin's war in. Next news. GOP leaders reverse to strip Ukraine aid from defense spending bill. 3 minutes read. House Republicans moved to strip $300 million in Ukraine aid from their defense spending bill Wednesday night and set up a separate vote on the funds, reversing course ahead of an expected final vote this week and amid uncertainty about whether the bill would pass. The House Rules Committee convened a last-minute meeting to remove. Below are your comments. The money used for Ukraine is the best military spending we have done in 50 years. Think about it. So far, for 19 months, we have spent about $75 billion for Ukraine. The result is that half of the Russian military has been destroyed for only about 8% of 1 year's defense spending, with no U.S. casualties. Putin wing of the Republican Party strikes again. When they say aid for Ukraine, funny thing is the millions don't actually go to Ukraine. We buy weapons from our own defense contractors and send the munitions to Ukraine, making those companies richer and keep the related jobs going. If you cut why are the Republican in the House trying to pass 4 or 5 separate budget bills now when they can't even agree on one budget bill to pass? The status of the $24 billion in funding for Ukraine is the key item. Who cares about the $300 million? A real clown show. Love that comment. To say that this place is a clown show under Republican control is doing a disservice to actual clowns. Next news. CNN. House Republicans to reject Senate deal as U.S. shutdown nears. 1 minute read. The bill includes an additional $6.1 billion in funding for Ukraine, comprising $4.5 billion for defense equipment and $1.6 billion in fiscal budget support. Below are your comments. This is so disingenuous. First they said the Senate plan cut aid to Ukraine to a very low level. Then, this article try to say that Fed employees won't be working to send money to Ukraine. Well, the Pentagon said they would pay for Ukraine aid out of their budgets, and we all know that is ignific. Why don't we give this money to Americans for school kids or solves homeless problem in the country instead of war machine? The last shutdown, 5 years ago, cost the nation's economy $11 billion. Instead of helping Ukraine, Republicans are willing to throw away billions of dollars. Putin will be delighted. These Republicans are trying to destroy America. They only say they are patriotic, but they are not. The U.S. politicians must stop donating Americans' money to Ukraine, Israel, etc., as they must donate from their own money! Exclamation mark. Next news. WSJ. Scholz blocks transfer of Taurus missiles to Ukraine due to fear of Russia. 2 minutes read. Other members of Germany's ruling coalition have approved sending Taurus missiles to Ukraine. On Sept. 4, German MP Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann wrote on Twitter that he, Scholz, alone blocks this decision within the coalition. Below are your comments. When they come for Berlin, should we help them? They can build more. What a coward. Germany needs to look at itself and ask itself who they are, cause they don't got balls like they used to fearing Russia. They're already balls deep in the war already. Maybe this guy does not remember when the Soviet Union occupied Germany. All the Ukrainians want is to have the weapons to fight, so this never happens again. This coward does not want to supply them with the tools they need to actually fight for him. Because if Russia wins, they will not stop with yet more German foot-dragging, excuses and lies. Next news. Most House Republicans vote to uphold Ukraine aid. 3 minutes read. A majority of House Republicans rejected a series of efforts to cut back on funding for Ukraine on Wednesday, voting down a trio of amendments to a Pentagon appropriations bill that would have curtailed Washington's financial support for Kyiv. The votes came more than 2 months after more than half of the House GOP conference. Below are your comments. Putin doesn't have to win on the fields of Ukraine as long as he has the Republicans in the House and the rest of the Republicans standing by in silence. A silent Republican is a complicit Republican. I'm 61. When I was about 25, West Virginia was a solid blue state. Please wait a moment. And the GOP was solidly anti-Russia, the USSR at the time. Trump is in Putin's pocket. Thus, his loudest supporters follow his pro-Putin actions and comments. Most sane Republicans, those that are left, that is, quietly oppose Trump's pro-Putin leanings. A vote against supporting Ukraine is a vote for Putin. Pick a side, democracy or a dictator, it's that simple. Next news. Polish opposition leader calls for unwavering military aid to Ukraine. 1 minute read. The Polish state should not budge from its position. Military support of Ukraine should not be questioned, said Donald Tusk, Poland's former prime minister. Below are your comments. Donald Tusk is a member of German minority in Poland. He is not Polish. Since late teens he worked for East German intelligence, Stasi, as an operative in Poland. Germans need another NAAZI state in European Union. He does his work for Germans, against interests of Poland. Looks like Donald got new directives from Olaf. You do it. In the USA we are too busy trying to find housing and food as millions sleep on the streets. Old people are especially suffering as food prices have climbed 50% or more since last year. After all, we can't all make as much money as an auto worker who is on strike. And even there, Tusk is the same guy who supported Nord Stream oil pipe that greatly contributed to war in Ukraine. He is 10% Pole and 90% German. EU sent him to Poland to win election and get Poland under the German boot. This is not the first time he is doing this. Polish Benedict Arnold. Breslau and Stettin for East Galicia, why not? Article. Environmental and demographic aspects of international conflicts. Next news. Trudeau apologizes for tribute to vet who fought in World War II Nazi unit. 2 minutes read. Prime Minister acknowledges harm to Ukraine's public relations efforts. Below are your comments. Trudeau and Zelensky left fully exposed. Next he needs to make an apology to India for making false accusations without any proof. He also needs to pledge to kick out all terrorists, extradite all terrorists that India has been asking for the last several years, and stops reading terrorism. Adding to general confusion, when Hunka spotted Zelensky in the parliament, he exclaimed out of old habit, "Ich tongue! These Juden is getting away." Yes, heard there is a monument for an Ukrainian SS division in an area where they settled outside of Toronto, I think. They do love their bandera. Next news. Several hundred Wagner fighters return to Ukraine, Impact Limited, Kyiv. 2 minutes read. Several hundred members of Russia's Wagner private mercenary group have returned to eastern Ukraine to fight but are not having a significant impact on the battlefield, a Ukrainian military spokesperson said on Wednesday. Wagner fighters played an important role in Russia's capture of the eastern city of Bakhmut in May. One of the longest and fiercest battles of Moscow's 19-month war in Ukraine. They left Bakhmut after the battle and some went to Belarus under a deal that ended a brief MEU. Below are your comments. Several hundred fighters, your words, of course their impact will be limited unless they bring in thousands more. Wagner troops are done for. If the only place for them to feel safe is on the front against Ukraine, they are doomed. Terrible predicament. What side are they fighting on, the one that bleeped their leader or the Ukraine side? Send them to Moscow after their real enemy, Putin. Moscow, the 27th of September 2023. RIA Novosti. Next news. Ukraine's president's office reacts to return of Wagner. Attempt to distract people from Ukraine's successes. 2 minutes read. Mikhailo Podolyak, advisor to the head of the President's Office of Ukraine, thinks that the media FFECT of the return of the Wagnerites to the east of Ukraine is more significant than the return itself. Below are your comments. Moscow, the 27th of September 2023. RIA Novosti. Zaporozhye. Wagner fighters are back because Moscow intends to relocate their paratroopers down south for a likely counteroffensive in the Robotino salient. Ukraine should take some of Russian territories and use them in negotiation for Russia to return Ukraine territories. Ready to grind more Ukrainian soldiers. Biceps. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.